A letter on clergy abuse from Pope Emeritus Benedict. He releases a lengthy document on the worldwide scandal. We have a report and analysis from Rome. Assange arrested. The founder of the controversial WikiLeaks website is in jail in the UK and facing charges from the United States. Urgent plea. The president of South Korea is in Washington delivering a message to President Donald Trump. We're at the White House. And start spreading the news, how a pro-life group is speaking out in the heart of New York City. On EWTN News Nightly for Thursday, April 11th, 2019. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you to those of you joining us from around the world for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Benedict XVI breaks his silence on the sex abuse crisis in the Church. In a document published today in a German monthly, the Pope Emeritus examines the roots of the crisis and charts a way forward. The National Catholic Register's Edward Penton has more.
It's being seen as Benedict's most significant pronouncement since he resigned the papacy in 2013. A lengthy essay in which the Pope Emeritus places the blame of the abuse crisis mainly on the sexual revolution and a collapse of Catholic moral theology since the Second Vatican Council. He says this resulted in a breakdown in traditional seminary formation that had preceded the Council. It could be said that the 20 years from 1960 to 1980, the previously normative standards regarding sexuality collapsed entirely and a new normalcy arose, Benedict writes. He then turns to the effect this had on priestly formation, saying, "This dissolution of the moral teaching authority of the Church necessarily had to have an effect on the diverse areas of the Church." He also says, quote, "Homosexual cliques were established in seminaries." Benedict ends by giving his perspective for a proper response. The former Pope says the Church must return to putting Christ at the center of our thoughts, words and actions. Only obedience and love for our Lord Jesus Christ, he says, can point the way.
Edward Penton joins us now from Rome. Ed, after his resignation, Pope Benedict pledged to stay out of the public eye. Why is he speaking out now?
Well, he talks about, Lauren, the deep distress that many laity and clergy have felt because of these shocking revelations, as he calls them, of the clerical sex abuse that came out recently. He talks about that some people have even lost the faith of the Church. And so he says that because he was in a position of responsibility during much of this time, he felt called to, as he says, contribute to a new beginning.
The Pope Emeritus also raises a question about canon law and its connection with the abuse crisis. What is that?
Well, he's referring there to legal protections in canon law, which he says were insufficient for many decades, so much so that it made it nearly impossible for convictions to be brought against abusive clergy. Now, this is a debatable point. I've spoken to a senior canon lawyer here who says that actually they were sufficient. It's just that the canon law norms weren't properly understood or implemented.
So will the Vatican comment on what the Pope Emeritus is saying?
Well, so far, Lauren, they've merely reported on it. Vatican News website did a straight report on it. L'Osservatore Romano reported on it. It's a point of interest, perhaps, that this essay was given to us at EWTN and other agencies, but not to the Vatican media, which is, some people have pointed out, is interesting. But at the same time, Benedict did get it cleared, something from Pope Francis and Cardinal Parolin. He said that he contacted them about it before publishing it. Whether they actually approved it or not, we don't know, but certainly he did notify them that this is going to be published.
Edward Penton, Rome correspondent for EWTN's National Catholic Register. Thanks, Ed.
Thank you, Lauren.
We will have expert analysis from Rome coming up later in the broadcast. Catholic leaders in Japan are set to investigate claims of clergy sexual abuse. The country's bishops will focus on 2 reported cases in 2002 and 5 from 2012. There are about 500,000 Catholics in that country. Justice Department officials are charging the founder of the controversial website WikiLeaks with conspiracy. Julian Assange was arrested this morning in London and faces extradition to the United States. He's accused of leaking tens of thousands of secret government documents. Correspondent Wyatt Goolsbee reports from the Justice Department. Good evening, Wyatt.
Good evening, Lauren. Justice Department officials laid out the charges against Julian Assange right after he was arrested. They say Assange conspired with former U.S. intelligence analyst Chelsea Manning to break into a classified computer at the Pentagon and leak state secrets. Assange's lawyer is fighting to keep the WikiLeaks founder from being extradited to the U.S. Julian Assange arrived to a court in London via police van this morning. He was dragged out of the Ecuadorian embassy, where the now bearded computer programmer had spent the last 7 years in asylum. A UK judge found Assange guilty of breaching his bail conditions, but he faces tougher charges if the UK agrees to extradite him to the US. Assange's lawyer is fighting back.
This sets a dangerous precedent for all media organizations and journalists in Europe and elsewhere around the world. This precedent means that any journalist can be extradited for prosecution in the United States for having published truthful information about the United States.
Despite calls to free Assange, Britain's top diplomat says bringing him to court immediately was the right decision.
Well, what we've shown today is that no one is above the law. Julian Assange is no hero. He is hidden from the truth for years and years. And it is right that his future should be decided in the British judicial system.
The UK had a warrant issued for Assange's arrest since 2012, after the Australian national failed to appear in court on charges of sexual misconduct in Sweden. Those charges were later dropped, but he remained inside Ecuador's embassy. Today, Ecuador's president announced he had withdrawn Assange's asylum status.
Da por finalizado el asilo diplomático.
President Lenin Moreno says Assange violated the norms at the embassy by installing prohibited equipment, mistreating security guards, and illegally accessing the embassy's security files. Today, President Trump was asked what he thought of Julian Assange's arrest. The president said, quote, "I know nothing about WikiLeaks." He also said, "It's not my thing." He added his attorney general will make a determination on the United States' next steps. During the 2016 campaign, then candidate Donald Trump said he loved WikiLeaks and welcomed the website's releasing of the Clinton campaign emails. Lauren?
Correspondent Wyatt Goolsbee reporting from the Justice Department. Thank you, Wyatt. In a major reversal, South Korea's constitutional court today ordered the easing of the country's decades-old ban on most abortions. The decision comes the same day the country's president arrived at the White House to meet with President Trump. President Moon Jae-in came to the city to jumpstart nuclear negotiations with North Korea. White House correspondent Mark Irons reports. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Lauren. Despite the breakdown in denuclearization talks earlier this year, today President Trump claimed a strong relationship with North Korea's leader, Kim Jong-un, and said a third meeting with Chairman Kim could happen. Those comments came soon after South Korea took court action to strike down a decades-old law defending life. The Catholic leader of South Korea, President Moon Jae-in, arriving at the White House after his country's constitutional court called for the removal of roadblocks to abortion access. For 66 years, abortions have largely been illegal in South Korea. The Conference of Catholic Bishops in the country expressed deep regret over today's verdict. South Korea's parliament now has until the end of 2020 to ease current abortion regulations. Human Life International, a Virginia-based pro-life group, tells News Nightly South Korea has never enforced its abortion laws, and so its abortion rate has been several times higher than that of the United States, since South Korean women commonly use the procedure as birth control. But the focus of today's White House meeting is North Korea.
I think North Korea has a tremendous potential, and I believe that President Moon agrees with that.
Denuclearization talks broke down earlier this year during President Trump's summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. But today, President Trump said their relationship remains strong. He even mentioned humanitarian aid going to the country.
South Korea is doing certain things to help out with food and various other things for North Korea.
The U.S. and a host of other countries have imposed crippling economic sanctions on North Korea as the hermit nation refused to stop developing and testing its nuclear weapons.
What impact on North Korea are economic sanctions having?
Sanctions tend to have really big negative effects, especially early on when you put them on, that over time countries find ways around them.
And a recent report from the UN shows North Korea is defying those sanctions with illegal shipments of petroleum and coal. Today, President Trump said sanctions will remain in place. We're also hearing from Kim Jong-un. He says other countries are wrong if they think sanctions will bring North Korea to its knees. Lauren?
White House correspondent Mark Irons. Thank you, Mark. Ohio's governor has signed a bill imposing one of the nation's toughest abortion restrictions. The heartbeat bill bans abortion once a baby's heartbeat is detected. Ohio is the 6th state to pass this measure. Abortion supporters say they plan to file a lawsuit. And in North Dakota, Governor Doug Burgum signs a measure making it a crime for doctors to perform the most commonly used second trimester abortion procedure. Its official title is dilation and evacuation. The bill refers to it as human dismemberment. The law will take effect if a federal appeals court or the Supreme Court allows its enforcement. Twitter publicly apologizes to a pro-life lawmaker. The social media giant had blocked an ad from Marsha Blackburn's Tennessee Senate campaign in 2017. The apology came during a hearing yesterday examining whether social media companies are stifling conservative speech. Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi spoke to the now senator. Good evening, Jason.
Good evening, Lauren. Marsha Blackburn's ad said she fought against Planned Parenthood and stopped the sale of baby body parts. The social media company rejected it, telling the campaign in 2017 that the ad was deemed inflammatory. Now that she won her race and is here in the Senate, she questioned Twitter about this controversy.
Mr. Manji, should Twitter allow ads that denounce Planned Parenthood for selling baby body parts?
Ma'am, thank you for that question, and I'd like to again apologize for you.
Yeah.
Every ad is judged
yes
within
or no
context.
Is good.
And we made a mistake on your ad, and I apologize.
Twitter explains they have to limit what could be seen as inflammatory content. That's because they say users cannot choose what ads they see, so they need to protect those people. Today I spoke with Senator Blackburn.
What they wanted to do was to punt, to not give a clear answer. When I asked the question about would you allow advertising from Starbucks in Patagonia, and it was if they meet our community standards. How about Chick-fil-A and Hobby Lobby? If they meet our community standards, well, who makes those standards? And is it those individuals that find pro-life language inflammatory? Is it those individuals who find it abhorrent that someone would challenge Planned Parenthood?
Republican senators asked about blocked pro-life ads. Facebook and Twitter executives responded they are not targeting conservatives. Now, liberal website Media Matters slammed yesterday's Senate hearing. They say conservatives falsely claim censorship to rile up the base. Senator Mazie Hirono says conservatives are only pointing to anecdotal evidence, but she says in reality, anti-conservative bias doesn't exist. Lauren?
Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi. Thank you, Jason. Coming up, what Pope Benedict says about the worldwide clergy abuse scandal. We have analysis. And remembering a World War II hero. Following a week of heavy protests, Sudan's military has ousted President Omar al-Bashir. Today, people took to the streets to celebrate. President al-Bashir is under house arrest. Officials announced the country will be under military rule for the next 2 years. Protesters want a civilian transitional government. Since the unrest began last week, more than a dozen demonstrators have been killed.
I ask you as a brother, rimanete nella pace. Stay in peace.
Pope Francis speaks to the leaders of rival groups in South Sudan following a 2-day retreat at the Vatican. The Holy Father also kissed the feet of the country's president and opposition leader. More than 400,000 people have been killed in South Sudan's 5-year civil war. An essay by Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI, who turns 92 next week, has provoked more debate on the abuse crisis rocking the church around the world. Our next guest says the letter is likely to make an impact on church leaders who are genuinely pursuing conversion. Father Robert Gall is a professor of ethics at the Pontifical University of the Holy Cross. Father, welcome back to our broadcast. Tell us, what is the most important message from Pope Emeritus Benedict, in your view?
I think the most important message, which is a very serious one and very apt for preparing for Holy Week, is martyrdom, that we should all be ready to die for the faith. And he explains that that's why that there's certain things that one should never do no matter what. But it's really a call for each of us to reinforce our faith in the person of Jesus Christ.
This essay is receiving some criticism here in the U.S. in mainstream media, and people are wondering if a Pope Emeritus should be weighing in on church matters. We haven't had two popes in centuries, so I think that's a pretty valid question.
Indeed, these are amazing times. It's clear that Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI considers that this is one of the greatest crises in the past 400 years. In fact, at one moment in the letter, he asks, so what are we going to do? We could create a new church. But he says, well, that's been tried before and it didn't go very well. And it's clear that he asked for permission from Pope Francis first, and he thanks Pope Francis for all that he's doing for the church. But he felt in conscience that he must contribute to the solution.
What should everyday Catholics take away from this essay?
Perhaps another thread that's right at the center of the essay is the importance of the Holy Eucharist and the devotion to the Holy Eucharist, which is one of the reasons why the sexual abuse crisis of clerics is so grave, because priests have the power to celebrate Holy Mass. All of us, but especially lay people, I suppose, really all of us, all of the baptized, should increase in our devotion, our love for Jesus and the Blessed Sacrament. And if we do so, that will definitely help heal the entire church.
Father Robert Gall of the Pontifical University of the Holy Cross, thank you again for your insights and for joining us.
Thank you, Lauren. God bless you.
The final survivor of a group that carried out a daring U.S. attack on Japan during World War II died Tuesday in San Antonio. Lieutenant Colonel Richard Cole was 103 years old. He was part of the Dolittle Tokyo Raiders. In 1942, they dropped bombs on targets in Japan, then headed to China. Several died during the mission. In 2013, Cole toasted his colleagues, saying, "May they rest in peace." Cole's daughter says he enjoyed every moment of his life, and a few days before his death, he had walked into the emergency room for treatment. A sailor killed in the attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941 has returned to Washington. Ramp workers and others on the tarmac stood at attention as the coffin was placed in the hearse. 20-year-old Navy fireman First Class Claude Gowie will be laid to rest tomorrow at Arlington National Cemetery. Up next, pro-lifers are taking their message to the Big Apple. The head of the prison system in Oregon is a lifelong Catholic, and she's looking to change the way the state views punishment. Colette Peters wants to humanize the incarceration period. She says jail should be about community, and she's calling on people of all faiths to volunteer to provide services, including spiritual help. For more on this story, including which European country's prison system inspired Peters to come up with her plan, visit our partners at CatholicNewsAgency.com. Tonight on EWTN Pro-Life Weekly, Senator Ben Sasse talks about the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act. The bill failed in the Senate earlier this year. Sasse tells host Catherine Hadro there should be bipartisan support for the legislation.
It doesn't require any courage to say that a baby that's been born and is outside of her mother and is fighting for life and gasping for breath on that delivery table, on that sadly intended abortion table, when that baby's alive, she needs basic medical care.
You can see more of Catherine's interview tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern on EWTN. The nation's largest pro-life youth organization takes its message to the Big Apple. Continuing its Planned Parenthood Truth Tour, Students for Life of America turned out in New York City's Times Square, carrying more than 900 crosses, representing the number of lives lost at Planned Parenthood daily. The group is also sponsoring a 50-foot tall pro-life video billboard. Joining me now from New York is Kate Maloney, Northeast Regional Coordinator for Students for Life of America. Kate, welcome to our broadcast.
Hi, yes, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, well, tell us about it. You know, you've got some groundbreaking activism going on there with your group. Have you had pushback?
You know, we've been actually relatively welcomed with open arms. When you're out here in the middle of Times Square in the heart of New York City, you get to start talking to people and you get to invest in them and you get to have these discussions and these conversations and you really get to unveil some, you know, really revealing things and you figure out, hey, you know, actually we agree more than we disagree. And so we've actually been welcomed with a lot of open arms, having really great conversations. My students are amazing. We've got students from New York, New Jersey, Texas. I mean, everybody came out for this event, you know, to be here for New York State and to show, you know, New York City and New York, you know, state residents that we are pro-life, the pro-life generation is here, and to have hope and to have courage and to have passion.
You're also petitioning the New York Health Department. The Reproductive Health Act permitting abortion up until birth is now law. And as the coordinator for that region, in that territory, New York and New Jersey, what is the goal of the petition? Do you think it will change anything?
Yeah, so, you know, really our big goal is education. So kind of behind me, we have our Planned Parenthood Truth Tour, which is all about kind of discussing the truth behind Planned Parenthood, which is that they are an abortion industry. That's where they make the most money. Consistently since 2005, the amount of abortions that have happened has raised. And now it's over 900 abortions that happen every day at Planned Parenthoods nationwide. And so we're out here to discuss that, to discuss, you know, the big push for Planned Parenthood Truth Tour is to make sure that states are held accountable and that they annually inspect these abortion facilities, because it's more common now that nobody wants to touch the issue of abortion, and that goes all the way up to the Department of Health. And you know, it's more about caring about the issue than caring about women's safety and caring about the issue of life.
You have a poll, Students for Life of America poll, that you conducted at the beginning of the year. I found it fascinating, and we've reported on this before, that 7 out of 10 millennials support limits on abortion, and 65% support the right to vote on abortion-related policy and want a voice. Do you feel like your voice is being heard by the larger pro-life movement?
Oh yes, definitely. I mean, we're all like one big family, and you know, and we're all unique and we all help each other out. So yeah, we definitely feel like we're heard. You know, people know who Students for Life is, and you know, we're out here for one goal, and that ultimate goal is to protect women who are victimized by the abortion industry and to abolish abortion in our lifetime, and we're definitely going to do that.
What's your political strategy as we head to 2020?
You know, more, like I said, it's really like a pro-education thing. So last semester, we do tours, like I just talked about the Planned Parenthood Truth Tour. Last semester, for our fall tour, we did the They Feel Pain Act, because it was just right around the time of election season. We wanted to bring awareness to students on college and high school campuses that, hey, do you know the abortion laws in your state? Did you know if your senator, you know, voted against the Born Alive Abortion Survivor Protection Act? You know, are you aware of what 20-week abortions are and that they're legal in your state? Because we wanted to build awareness, because millennials are smart, you know, young people are smart, and they push culture. And so if we educate them, if we meet them where they are, and we speak the truth in love, you know, we're going to see this tide turning. And I think in 2020, you know, we're definitely going to see a more, you know, pro-life future happening. And that the same thing goes for New York State. You know, the tide is going to turn. New York State has awakened, and the Reproductive Health Act, you know, the promoters of it should be afraid, because the pro-life generation is here, and we're going to talk about it, and we're not going to stand for it.
Kate Maloney, Northeast Regional Coordinator for Students for Life of America from Times Square. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
For all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, to all of you around the world, thank you for watching. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Let's keep in touch online. Follow me at Lauren Ashburn on Twitter and at Lauren Ashburn EWTN on Facebook. Good night, and God bless you.